really grow closer to him if we're holding something back or if we're doubting him? Well, what I'm learning is that as we edge God out, which actually stands for ego, interestingly, edging God out, ego, as a result of our pride or fear or whatever it is that we're holding on to, we separate ourselves from him. When we do this, it becomes a distorted picture of who he is, pushing our ideas and our agenda, making ourselves in control and not allowing him in control. I've done this many times in my life. I don't want to blame my emotions for everything, but really, they've really played a toll on my relationship with Christ. And I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Inside Out. It's a kid's movie, but it's really good for adults as well. 5 different emotions are depicted in the different characters. And it's really interesting how they tug at her and they make her sad or they make her happy, or the little character in it. Anyway, this is actually what made me think of talking to you about highly sensitive people. But when we exalt God rather than edge him out, he becomes the object of our worship, the source of who we are. He makes us whole in him by helping us be unmoved when we have different circumstances, by standing firm in our faith and overcoming our brokenness, allowing him to work through us and letting go of whatever it is that's holding us back or making us broken. So is there something that you need to start doing or not doing to become whole or become closer to him? Are you in a circumstance that's holding you back, that's really got a grip on you and it's preventing you from really focusing and loving him? And I've experienced different things, and I don't want to share too much of me because I want to hear others. But there's a lot of things that have held me back. And the closer I become to him and the more that I let go of things, the more freedom I feel, the more light in my life I see. So you're going to hear from Christina and Angie today, and they're going to tell you a little bit about their stories. But I just want to tell you first that as God is calling me in particular to radical change and tempering my emotions as well, he's also telling me not to have expectations of people. So I've had expectations of my family, of my marriage, of my kids daily. And it really tears me up because when things don't happen as I expect them, well, I become sad and I become lonely and I become further separated from Christ. So what I'm learning is I need to stop searching this world for things that make me whole, like my relationships, helping, meeting my expectations, and really seeking only him. So stop living in the world is what I'm learning. So no matter what happens in my day or words that hurt me, the emotions that I feel that have my head just spinning, I know that I can become complete in him, complete in the grace that he offers, and that I can have faith and I can trust in him. I have to remind myself of this daily. I don't know if you know the song, Lord, I Need You. I need you, Lord. Every day I say, Lord, I need you. Every hour, every minute, I need you, Lord, to overcome the things that I have in my own life. And I believe this is the greatest need that we have, that we all have, is to overcome, to be overcomers. So now I'm just going to invite Christina.
Thank you. I was kind of surprised and a little bit pleased in some respects that, and grateful that I was asked to get up and share today. And this has been kind of an interesting journey for me. This is not my comfortable place. This is not my comfort zone. But God's had me on a really interesting journey here lately. And I just want to go back a little ways. Back probably about 10 years ago, I remember being at some kind of a musical event, and halfway through the evening, there was a break, and somebody got up, and they were speaking, and they were sharing their testimony, and they were talking about, following God and being bold for God. And I remember getting this image in my head of myself up doing the same thing. And I thought, I dismissed it as daydreaming, and I thought, oh, I'm just admiring somebody who has the ability to get up and speak in public and and do this sort of thing. And so I didn't give it a whole lot of thought. And then a number of years later, I was at a Women of Faith simulcast, and there was another speaker there, and again, I got this clear image of myself standing up in front of people and speaking, and I thought, what's God trying to teach me through this? Is this from God or not? And I thought, it's a pride issue. I think these people, you know, I'm just enamored with people who have this ability to get up and speak, and so it's about the adulation, because I'm a bit of an approval junkie, and I love getting a pat on the back and people saying good job. And so this is what it was about. God was teaching me about pride. And so I kind of just dismissed it again. And then last fall, we were at the Leadership Summit, and there was a speaker there, Susan Kane was one of the presenters, and she's written a book called Quiet, and it's about highly sensitive people and introverts, which I have discovered that I am. I've known this for a while, and that's why this is not natural and comfortable to me. And so I got this image again, and instead of dismissing it this time, I kind of said this prayer in my head. I said, okay, God, if this is from you, then you give me the message and you give me the platform, and I'll show up. And so months went by, and nothing happened. It's been quite a year for me because my brother passed away in January, and I've been on a journey of healing. And then in May, they didn't have a speaker for the 24th of May weekend, and talk was that they were going to cancel the service. And I thought, well, I can't cancel a service. If nobody else will stand up and speak, I'll stand up and speak. I had no idea what I was going to speak on, none whatsoever. But it's interesting because God gave me an opportunity to share some of the lessons that I'd been learning during my season of grief. And what's interesting about that is that in the weeks leading up to actually speaking, I was completely sort of in the Word. I was absorbing it, I was meditating on it, I was praying all the time, I was reaching out to people and having them pray for me and for the opportunity. And so it was just a wonderful time of really being close to God and drawing close to God. And I got up and I spoke, and it was a great experience. And this is what happens when you're obedient to God, is now He keeps thrusting me out there and getting me to come out of my comfort zone and do stuff. So it's been interesting. But I shared a funny story with some people recently, and it's interesting because in the weeks leading up to actually speaking, like I said, I was completely focused on God, and I was completely in the Word, and so words of encouragement came to my mouth readily, and you know, I was in tune to people who were in need, and I was able to speak words of comfort and stuff like that. And in the days and weeks kind of coming out of that, the urgency wasn't there. I didn't have this goal looming. I didn't have this deadline that I had to meet. You know, my prayer leading up to it was that I'd represent God well, that I would share His Word truthfully and faithfully, and that He would use that. And in the days coming out of it, when you don't have that kind of hanging over you, then, you know, my devotion times got a little more relaxed and a little more haphazard and a little more casual, and, you know, I wasn't as disciplined. And one of the big changes that's happened for me this last year is that I still work with the Department of National Defense. I do health records work. And for the last 5 years, I've been doing it sort of in this secluded little office, which an introvert loves, because I'm kind of my own boss, and I'm working off-site, and I'm doing my own thing. But now, all of a sudden, last October, I found myself being asked to come back to our main health records department, which is much bigger and much noisier and open concept, and it was overwhelming for me. And I've really had a hard time adjusting to all the personality differences and the clashes and everything. And so I've been struggling with seeing people created in God's image, that everyone is created in God's image, and sort of seeing that and accepting that and responding in that way. And so in my head, I've battled anxiety and depression most of my adult life. And God's helped me to gain certain victories over this at different times. And, but I've had years and years and years of negative thinking patterns, of noise going on inside my head to say, you're not good enough, and they're not meeting your expectations, and you can be judgmental, and you can, and so that's sometimes, if I'm not drawing closer to God and doing everything I can to draw closer to God, that's kind of where my thought patterns go. So in the weeks following my speaking in May, I found myself kind of going down this road. I'm trying to be light, and I'm trying to speak encouragement, and I'm trying to be a positive force in the office, and it's getting more and more challenging. And anyway, this one morning I'm driving to work, and I inherited my brother's car when he passed away, and Edward was out of town, and so I'm driving to work this one morning, and all these thoughts are going through my head, and I'm anticipating, you know, conflict, and I'm dealing in my head what these conversations are going to look like, and I'm driving to work, and I'm driving to work, and I get to the bridge, and I pull up to the wicket, and I think, I have no MAC pass. I have no money in my purse. And so I'm there, and hands are going, and I'm explaining all this to the person, and I thought, you have to let me turn around so that I can go and get some money so I can pay to go across the bridge, and I'm searching through my bag, and he's kind of looking at me, and his jaw's dropped, and I'm just this frantic mess. And at one time, these negative thoughts would have brought me to a place where I would have been completely embarrassed. I would have thought everybody's going to remember my name, they're going to remember my car, they're going to remember my license plate. Everybody in the city is going to be talking about this wild woman who tried to go through without any money. Because that's where my head goes. That's where this noise sort of takes me. And I didn't think that. I wasn't embarrassed. And my other go-to emotion sometimes has been anger. I could have been really angry at my husband because he left with the MAC pass in the car and went out of town and didn't give it to me. But I wasn't mad at him. I wasn't even mad at myself for forgetting it, for not having the presence of mind. But what God revealed to me that day, and as I'm driving home, they did let me turn around and do a U-E and go back out, and I thought, where am I going to get change at, 7 o'clock in the morning? So I thought, I'm just going to drive home. And as I'm driving home, I'm thinking to myself, God has really used this whole thing to kind of open my eyes to the fact that my negative thinking has not allowed me to stay present in the moment and do and attend to what needs to be attended to. That's where my negative thinking takes me. It takes me away from God. It takes me away from how He wants me to react and respond. It takes me away from attending to the here and now. And so it's been a different few weeks since that event, and I've been able to go to work with a different attitude and to see people in a different way. And for those of you who don't know, I've been asthmatic most of my life, and asthma is something that has to be dealt with on a regular basis. I've prayed for healing for that and for wholeness, and I believe that God, it's fully within His realm of possibility that He can just remove that from me. But He hasn't chosen to do that at this time, and I'm okay with that. My prayer has become, Lord, if you will, take this away from me, but if not, please don't ever let this become an issue that stops me from serving you and from being your hands and your feet. And so that's become my prayer. But like the asthma, sometimes my mental state has been chronic brokenness. And I think it's really interesting how this whole season of grieving that I got to share about in May, I thought God was teaching me one thing, and He was teaching me something very valuable through that. But He used that whole situation and that whole opportunity to teach me something completely different and to show me and to reveal something completely different that I also needed to heal from. And the verse that came to me recently is from Philippians 1:6, And I am certain that God, who began the good work within you, will continue his work until it is finally finished on the day when Christ Jesus returns. And I am just so incredibly thankful that even in my chronic brokenness, God can use me and can still teach me, and my job is to remain moldable and malleable and something for him to work with. And if I'm not doing everything in my power to draw closer to God and to get to know him and to be who he wants me to be, then I'm moving away from him. And that's my takeaway from that whole thing. And so yeah, I'm just really excited that God keeps me on this journey.